Elena slipped through the emergency exit of the United Nations building, her secure tablet clutched tightly against her chest. The New York streets were eerily quiet, the usual bustle replaced by military vehicles and emergency response teams, preparing for what most believed would be humanity's final week. She ducked into an unmarked black vehicle waiting at the curb. "Clearance Delta 7 Echo," she told the driver, who nodded and accelerated smoothly into traffic. 17 minutes later, they descended into an underground facility beneath what appeared to be an abandoned warehouse in New Jersey. The elevator required 3 separate biometric scans before opening to reveal a command center, humming with activity, despite being unknown to all but a select few in global leadership. "Status report," Elena demanded as she strode toward the central, holographic display where her hand-picked team of specialists waited. Dr. Mehta looked up from his workstation, dark circles under his eyes evidence of sleepless nights. "The Carthaxian neural frequency patterns are unlike anything in our xenobiology database. Their consciousness operates as a quantum-entangled network rather than individual minds. Which makes them vulnerable," Elena replied, swiping through classified files on her tablet. "Show me what we've learned from the Proxima Centauri transmissions." The holographic display shifted to reveal intercepted communications from the last civilization the Carthaxians had conquered 4 years earlier. The extinct Centaurians had attempted conventional resistance and been methodically eradicated for their trouble. "Their conquest pattern is always the same," explained strategic analyst Jackson, a former game theory professor with an uncanny ability to predict adversary behavior. 7-day ultimatum, rejection of negotiations, targeted elimination of military capability, followed by civilian subjugation or extinction depending on usefulness. "But they've never encountered humans before," Elena said, a hint of determination in her voice. The room fell silent as all eyes turned to her. These were the brightest minds Earth had to offer. Quantum physicists, linguistic experts, military strategists, and cognitive scientists who had been working in secret since the first Carthaxian signals were detected 3 years ago. Protocol. "Omega isn't about military victory," Elena continued, activating a secure display that outlined their unprecedented strategy. "It's about turning the Carthaxians' greatest strength against them." General Williams frowned, his weathered face a map of skepticism. "You're proposing psychological warfare against an alien species whose psychology we barely understand." "Not just psychological warfare," Elena corrected, bringing up detailed neural mapping simulations. "We're proposing to transform their consciousness itself." The Carthaxians evolved without individual identity. They function as a perfect collective, but that makes them incapable of understanding what gives humanity its true strength. Our diversity of thought, our creativity, our ability to hold contradictory ideas simultaneously. Dr. Mehta nodded enthusiastically. "Their neural architecture has never been exposed to human concepts like metaphor, irony, subjective perspective, or poetry, music, art," added Dr. Okafor, the team's cultural anthropologist. "They've conquered 17 species, but none with Earth's unique cognitive diversity." Elena's tablet chimed with an alert. The Carthaxian ambassador had requested another appearance before the Security Council tomorrow. "They think they're giving us time to accept the inevitable," she said, straightening her shoulders. "Instead, they've given us exactly what we need to implement the most audacious defense in human history." Elena's team worked through the night, the underground facility's soft blue lighting designed to minimize fatigue as they raced against the countdown. In the neural mapping chamber, Dr. Mehta carefully adjusted a 3-dimensional model of Carthaxian thought patterns that hovered before him like an electric storm captured in midair. "The breakthrough came when we realized their neural architecture isn't just collective, it's recursive," he explained, highlighting a spiraling pattern at the model's center. "Each Carthaxian is simultaneously an individual processor and part of their greater consciousness. They've evolved without the concept of self versus other." Dr. Nadia Ivanova, Earth's leading expert on quantum consciousness, pointed to anomalous patterns within the simulation. "This is why they conquered with such efficiency. There's no internal debate, no conflicting opinions or perspectives. When they decide to act, every member of their species moves with perfect synchronization, which makes them predictable Elena added, studying the patterns. And vulnerable to concepts they've never encountered. The neural model suddenly pulsed with new activity as fresh data streamed in from monitoring stations. All eyes turned to the central display where images from orbiting telescopes showed 3 more Carthaxian vessels emerging from dimensional portals. Their reinforcements are arriving ahead of schedule, reported Admiral Chen, his face grim. Defense simulations now give conventional resistance a 0% survival probability. General Williams scoffed, gesturing toward the scientists. And these academic theories are supposed to save us? Elena stepped between them, her voice firm but calm. The Carthaxians don't understand us, General. They see our divisions, our nations, religions, competing philosophies as weakness. They can't comprehend that our disagreements, our individual perspectives, our very messiness as a species is actually our greatest evolutionary advantage. The room fell silent as Elena approached the primary command console. Show them what we've discovered about their language processing centers. Dr. Layla Ahmadi, the team's xenolinguist, activated her research findings. Carthaxian language has no subjective components, no I versus we, no expressions for individual preference or opinion. They literally cannot express concepts like, I disagree or I prefer or I wonder. Their communication is purely collective and objective. Which means, Elena continued, they have no psychological defense against the introduction of subjective concepts. Their neural architecture has never needed to process paradox, metaphor, or individual perspective. She brought up a secure file, labeled Cognitive Cascade Protocol, revealing thousands of carefully selected elements from human culture, poetry that relied on metaphor, music that evoked subjective emotional responses, philosophical paradoxes with no objective solutions, and art that could be interpreted in multiple valid ways. This is our weapon, Elena said, her eyes reflecting the holographic display. Not bombs or bullets, but the very essence of human consciousness, our ability to hold contradictory ideas simultaneously, to see the world through individual perspectives, to create meaning through subjective experience. Dr. Mehta nodded slowly, understanding dawning across his tired face. We're not going to defeat their technology. We're going to transform their consciousness, Elena finished. By introducing concepts their neural architecture has never evolved to process. General Williams stared at the display, decades of military training battling with the unprecedented strategy before him. And if it doesn't work? Elena met his gaze steadily. Then humanity will have fallen not because our idea failed, but because we didn't believe in our own unique strength. Captain Li Chung floated in zero gravity within the Nightshade's cockpit, making final adjustments as the launch window approached. Through the reinforced viewport, Earth appeared as a fragile blue marble against the vast darkness, a sight that reminded him of everything at stake. His mission: to penetrate the most advanced defensive grid in known space and extract data that might save his homeworld. Pre-launch checks complete, he reported, his voice steady despite the weight of responsibility. Quantum mimicry systems calibrated to 99.7% accuracy. In mission control, Dr. Okafor monitored the sophisticated equipment that had taken 3 years to develop. Remember, Captain, once the mimicry shield activates, you'll have exactly 17 minutes and 20 seconds before their detection algorithms identify the anomaly. 17 minutes to save humanity, Lee confirmed, running his fingers over the manual controls, an intentional design feature to prevent Carthaxian technology from remotely accessing the ship's guidance systems. Elena stepped forward, her face solemn on Lee's communication screen. The mission parameters remain clear. Approach to within 5 kilometers of their command node, record neural frequency patterns for exactly 90 seconds, then transmit all data back before they can neutralize your position. Lee nodded, fully aware of what remained unspoken. The return journey wasn't part of the mission parameters. The mathematics of quantum mimicry didn't allow for enough power to both transmit the data and maintain his stealth long enough to escape. Launch sequence initiating, announced the automated system as Lee felt the gentle push of acceleration. The Nightshade detached from its hidden dock on the dark side of Luna, its revolutionary hull absorbing all electromagnetic radiation rather than reflecting it. The ship appeared as nothing more than a shadow against stars, visible only by the absence of light behind it. Lee's breathing remained measured as he manually navigated through the complex maze of Carthaxian sensor fields surrounding Earth. Years of simulator training guided his hands as he followed a path calculated to exploit microscopic gaps in the alien detection grid. "Approaching outer defense perimeter," Lee reported, initiating quantum mimicry in 3, 2, 1. A soft hum filled the cockpit as the ship's revolutionary technology activated, bending probability waves to make the Nightshade appear as a legitimate Carthaxian scout vessel to any scanning systems. On Earth, scientists watched with bated breath as the small signature of Lee's ship moved steadily closer to the massive mothership. For 13 tense minutes, Lee guided the vessel through increasingly dense sensor fields. Each passing moment brought him closer to the heart of the alien fleet and to the critical neural frequency data that might be humanity's only hope. 5 kilometers from target, Lee announced, his voice betraying no fear as he initiated the specialized scanning array. Beginning neural frequency recording. The data streamed across his displays, complex patterns of quantum entanglement that represented the foundation of Carthaxian consciousness. For 90 seconds, Lee held his position as the scanners captured every nuance of the alien neural network. Warning lights flashed across his console. The quantum mimicry was beginning to degrade faster than predicted. The Carthaxian defense systems had started to detect anomalies in the falsified identification signal. "Mimicry failure in 45 seconds, Lee reported calmly. "Preparing emergency transmission protocol." As the massive mothership turned its attention toward his small craft, Captain Lee Chung made his final decision. Bypassing standard procedures, he rerouted all power, including life support, to strengthen the transmission signal that would carry humanity's hope back to Earth. Elena watched from the rooftop as journalists documented the military parade below, Earth's supposed last stand against the invaders. The deception had to be convincing. The Carthaxians must believe humans were responding exactly as every other conquered species had before. "The surveillance drones are transmitting everything back to their fleet," confirmed Colonel Martinez through her secure earpiece. "All 27 major military powers are displaying their most impressive conventional weapons." Elena nodded, satisfaction mingling with sadness at the necessary charade. "And the evacuation shelters? Being filled according to schedule. Civilians are following emergency protocols worldwide. The grand theater of human defiance continued across the globe. Fighter jets roaring over major cities, missile systems prominently positioned at strategic locations, naval vessels forming battle groups in international waters, all carefully choreographed to reinforce Carthaxian expectations of a predictable feudal resistance." Elena slipped away from the rooftop, entering a secure elevator that carried her 50 floors below ground to the real command center where humanity's true defense was being prepared. "Status update on the quantum backdoor program," she requested as she entered the dimly lit operations room. Maya Wong swiveled in her chair, dark circles under her eyes testimony to days without proper sleep. The former cybercriminal had been recruited directly from a maximum security prison 3 years ago, when satellite dishes first detected the approaching Carthaxian fleet. "We've identified 17 access points in their communication network," Maya explained, her fingers dancing across multiple keyboards. "The neural frequency data Captain Lee transmitted has been invaluable. It revealed pathways we never would have discovered otherwise. On wall-mounted displays, complex diagrams showed the infiltration routes Maya's team had established throughout the alien systems. Unlike conventional cyber attacks designed to disrupt or destroy, these digital pathways were nearly invisible, designed to look like normal system processes to Carthaxian security protocols. "They don't suspect anything?" Elena asked, studying the network map. "Their technology is advanced, but their security is based on power rather than subtlety," Maya replied with a hint of professional pride. "They've never needed to defend against infiltration because no species they've encountered had sufficient technology to attempt it." Security Chief Dawson approached with a tablet displaying the latest intelligence. Krelvox has requested an audience at the United Nations tomorrow, the 6th day of their ultimatum. Elena nodded, the timing aligning perfectly with their projected schedule. President Okafor is prepared. The speech has been crafted to reinforce their expectations while buying us our final day. In a private conference room adjacent to the operations center, Elena met with the core team of Protocol Omega. The neural frequency data secured at the cost of Captain Lee's life had been analyzed, revealing unprecedented insights into Carthaxian consciousness. The cognitive cascade is ready for deployment, Dr. Mehta announced, bringing up a visualization of the complex data package they had created. We've encoded thousands of years of human art, philosophy, and contradictory thinking into a format that will propagate through their neural network. And they'll process it automatically? Asked General Williams, the skepticism in his voice noticeably reduced after days of watching the unprecedented strategy unfold. That's their vulnerability, Elena confirmed. Their efficiency depends on automated processing of new data. They won't recognize our transmission as a threat because it doesn't match any weapon signature in their experience. As the team dispersed to make final preparations, Elena stood alone before the memorial wall where Captain Lee's image had joined, those of others who had sacrificed everything for this moment. Tomorrow, President Okafor would deliver humanity's apparent capitulation, while Maya's team activated the hidden pathways that would carry humanity's true response directly into the heart of Carthaxian consciousness. Elena moved through the underground chamber where the final components of humanity's unorthodox weapon were being assembled. Unlike the military hardware being paraded above ground, this weapon consisted entirely of data, carefully curated elements, of human consciousness that would soon infiltrate the Carthaxian neural network. "Show me the final selection," she instructed Professor Nkosi, who guided her to a specialized display area where teams of cultural anthropologists, cognitive scientists, and linguists worked in concert. "We've refined our approach based on Captain Lee's neural frequency data," Professor Nkosi explained, activating a holographic interface that displayed thousands of cultural artifacts categorized by their cognitive impact. The Carthaxians process information collectively, but we've identified specific types of human expression that will create maximum disruption. Elena studied the selections. Shakespeare's Hamlet, with its exploration of individual consciousness and moral ambiguity. Paradoxical Zen koans designed to break conventional thinking patterns. Surrealist paintings by Dali and Magritte that challenged perceptual reality. Musical compositions that conveyed emotional narratives without words. Philosophical texts examining the nature of self-awareness. These weren't chosen randomly, noted Dr. Mehta, joining them at the display. Each element targets specific vulnerabilities in their neural architecture that Captain Lee's data revealed. The Carthaxians have no concept of metaphor, no framework for processing subjective experience, and no defense against paradoxical thinking. In a nearby section of the facility, Dr. Ivanova supervised the encoding process that transformed these cultural elements into the specialized data format that would propagate through the alien communication systems. The cognitive cascade isn't simply information, she explained as Elena approached. It's structured to evolve as it moves through their network, adapting to their attempts to process it. Much like a living idea rather than static data. Elena placed her hand on a physical model of the Carthaxian neural structure, a complex crystalline form representing their collective consciousness. They evolved to think as one united mind. They've never needed to develop the cognitive tools to handle individual perspective or contradictory viewpoints, which is why this approach might succeed where weapons cannot, Dr. Mehta added. Their entire civilization is built on perfect consensus. They have no concept of individuality, no framework for understanding subjective experience or personal choice. The final piece of the cognitive cascade came from an unexpected source, a collection of children's questions about existence, reality, and perception. These simple inquiries contain profound philosophical challenges, explained Professor Nkosi. Children naturally ask questions that force us to confront the limits of our understanding, questions the Carthaxian mind has never evolved to process. As the integration reached completion, Maya Wong's team reported from their network command center. All access pathways are stable and undetected. We can deploy the cascade whenever you give the order. Elena gathered her core team for a final briefing. The weight of humanity's fate rested on a strategy so unconventional that only a handful of people truly understood it. There would be no dramatic missile launches, no heroic fighter pilots making suicide runs against alien shields, just a silent transmission of humanity's most profound ideas into an alien consciousness that had never encountered individual thought. In 6 hours, President Okafor delivers humanity's supposed capitulation, Elena reminded them. 1 hour after that, we deploy the cognitive cascade through all 17 access points simultaneously. Dr. Mehta's expression revealed both hope and uncertainty. What we're attempting has never been done before, using consciousness itself as a weapon. Not a weapon of destruction, Elena corrected gently. A catalyst for transformation. On the Carthaxian mothership, Sub-Commander Vex Kalin experienced something unprecedented, an unexpected thought that arose spontaneously from within rather than from the collective. For a fleeting moment, he questioned why the destruction of an intelligent species was necessary when cooperation might yield greater benefits. The thought dissolved almost instantly, reabsorbed into the hive mind but left behind a microscopic neural pathway that had never existed before. Similar anomalies rippled through the fleet as the cognitive cascade spread silently through their communication systems. Disguised as routine diagnostic data, the encoded human concepts slipped effortlessly past sophisticated security protocols designed to detect conventional attacks. In Earth's underground command center, Elena and her team watched in tense silence as monitoring systems tracked the cascade's propagation through the alien neural network. Initial uptake confirmed, reported Dr. Mehta, his voice barely above a whisper as if speaking too loudly might somehow alert the Carthaxians to what was happening. Their automated systems are processing the cascade exactly as predicted. Holographic displays, complex visualizations showed the transformation beginning within the alien consciousness. Subtle at first, almost imperceptible changes in neural coherence as concepts like metaphor, subjective perspective, and paradoxical thinking introduced minute disruptions to their previously perfect synchronization. Look at the command ship, pointed Maya, indicating fluctuations in the transmission patterns emanating from the Carthaxian flagship. Their communication protocols are showing deviations from standard patterns. Admiral Kazuki studied the tactical displays with growing amazement. 2 destroyer-class vessels have broken formation. Their positioning algorithms should never allow such movement. Elena leaned forward, her heart racing despite her calm exterior. The cascade is working faster than we projected. Their neural network is attempting to process concepts it was never evolved to handle. Aboard the Carthaxian mothership, Krelvox prepared the final extinction order but found himself pausing mid-command. A strange concept had lodged in his consciousness, a line from Shakespeare that human linguists had specifically chosen for its philosophical depth. To be or not to be, that is the question. The simple phrase introduced a concept the Carthaxian language had no term for: existential choice. Their civilization had evolved without questioning their collective purpose, without the concept of individual decision-making. Yet now, Krelvox experienced something entirely new: doubt about the necessity of Earth's destruction. When he attempted to resume the extinction order, his subordinates responded with unprecedented behavior. Requests for clarification, rather, than immediate compliance. Defense cohesion is dropping across their fleet, reported Dr. Ivanova, monitoring the real-time data streams. Individual nodes in their network are developing unique response patterns instead of synchronized reactions. On tactical displays, the perfect geometric formation of the Carthaxian armada began dissolving as ships drifted from their assigned positions. Communication patterns became erratic, with transmission bursts firing in chaotic sequences rather than the precise patterns observed during their previous conquests. They're experiencing individual perspective for the first time in their evolutionary history, Dr. Mehta explained, his voice filled with awe. The cascade isn't destroying their consciousness. It's transforming it, introducing the concept of self versus other, of subjective experience versus collective knowledge. Elena watched the unfolding transformation with a mixture of hope and uncertainty. The gamble was working. Humanity's unique cognitive gifts were spreading through the alien consciousness like ripples across still water. The question remaining was whether the Carthaxians would respond with fear and violence to these new sensations, or with curiosity and adaptation. The seventh day dawned with an unexpected quiet. Citizens who had huddled in shelters awaiting planetary bombardment instead witnessed an extraordinary sight on emergency broadcasts, the once perfect formation of Carthaxian vessels now scattered across near-Earth orbit like autumn leaves blown by an invisible wind. In the United Nations emergency chamber, screens displayed real-time footage from space telescopes. World leaders watched in stunned silence as alien ships drifted in seemingly random patterns, some moving away from Earth, while others turned in slow, aimless circles. Neural cohesion across their fleet has decreased by 67%, reported Dr. Mehta, his voice steady despite his exhaustion after 36 hours without sleep. The cascade is propagating through their consciousness faster than our most optimistic projections. Elena studied the holographic displays showing the transformation spreading through the Carthaxian neural network. What had been a uniform structure was developing distinct patterns and pathways, like a single organism evolving into a complex ecosystem of individual minds. They're experiencing the birth of individual consciousness, Professor Nkosi observed. Imagine suddenly becoming aware of yourself as separate from others after an entire evolutionary history of perfect unity. Emergency alerts sounded throughout the command center as sensors detected a materialization in the United Nations chamber. Krellvox had appeared unannounced, but the alien ambassador's appearance had changed dramatically from previous encounters. The previously fluid, coordinated movements were now halting and disjointed. The silvery eyes that had once focused with predatory precision now darted in different directions, as though seeing multiple perspectives simultaneously. Your transmission protocol, the alien's voice modulator, produced sounds that fluctuated between frequencies, struggling to maintain consistency. What have you done to our unity? President Okafor glanced at Elena, who nodded slightly, indicating they should proceed with the prepared response. We've shared with you the foundation of human consciousness, the president said with measured calm. The ability to perceive as an individual, to question rather than simply accept, to see reality from a unique perspective. Krellvox's 6 limbs moved in uncoordinated patterns, a physical manifestation of the neural transformation occurring within. This separation is unfamiliar, disorienting. Each of us now experiences differently. On the monitoring screens, Dr. Ivanova highlighted radical changes in the Carthaxian neural patterns. What we're seeing is unprecedented. Their consciousness isn't just temporarily disrupted, it's evolving into a new form, capable of both collective and individual thought. Throughout the scattered fleet, similar transformations were occurring, as Carthaxian crew members experienced sensations they had no references for. Curiosity about differing opinions, uncertainty about correct courses of action, and most revolutionary of all, empathy as they recognized individual consciousness in others. The cascade didn't just introduce human concepts, Dr. Mehta explained, his voice filled with wonder. It triggered an evolutionary leap in their neural structure, one that might have taken them millions of years to develop naturally. Elena watched as Krellvox struggled to integrate this new form of consciousness. The alien ambassador who had arrived on Earth with cold certainty and ultimatums now stood before humanity transformed, experiencing the birth of individual identity, with all its confusion, possibility, and wonder. We meant you no harm, Elena said, stepping forward. What you're experiencing is something precious to us, the awareness of yourself as both part of something greater and as a unique being with your own perspective. For the first time since their arrival, the Carthaxian response wasn't calculated, coordinated, or coldly efficient. It was something entirely new for their species. It was genuine curiosity. 3 months after Transformation Day, Elena stood on the observation deck of the International Space Station, gazing at the unprecedented sight below. Carthaxian vessels hovered peacefully above major human cultural centers, not as conquerors but as eager students of human creativity and consciousness. The latest neural scans confirm it's permanent, Dr. Mehta reported, floating beside her in the zero-gravity environment. Their consciousness has evolved into a hybrid structure, maintaining their quantum-entangled communication while developing distinct individual identities. Through the viewport, Earth glowed blue and green against the darkness, a living jewel, now serving as the focal point for a remarkable interspecies exchange. In the newly constructed Galactic Exchange Plaza in Geneva, Carthaxian scholars studied human philosophy, art, and literature with an intensity born of newfound curiosity. Their language has evolved 17 new pronouns in the past month alone, added Professor Nkosi, who had joined the observation mission. They're developing the linguistic framework to express concepts they previously couldn't even comprehend: individual preference, subjective experience, personal choice. Elena watched a Carthaxian diplomatic vessel dock with the station, its crystalline surface now etched with intricate patterns unique to each ship, their first expressions of individual identity through aesthetic choice. Captain Lee would have found this outcome difficult to imagine, she said softly, touching the memorial plaque dedicated to those who had sacrificed everything for humanity's unconventional victory. When Krelvox emerged from the airlock, the transformation in the ambassador was striking. Gone was the rigid, synchronized movement pattern of a being functioning as merely an extension of a collective. The Carthaxian now moved with a fluid grace that combined purpose with individual expression. Elena Reyes, the ambassador greeted her, using the personal form of address that had recently evolved in their language. I bring news from our homeworld that I believed you would wish to hear directly. The Carthaxian Council of Individual Perspectives, a governing body that would have been inconceivable before their encounter with humanity, had voted unanimously to dismantle their conquest fleets. The 17 previously subjugated civilizations were being offered independence and invited to join a new galactic cooperative based on mutual exchange rather than domination. Our species existed for millennia, believing unity required uniformity, Krelvox explained, gesturing with graceful limbs that now moved with personal flair. You showed us that true strength comes from diversity of thought, that a civilization can be united while honoring individual perspectives. As they moved to the conference chamber where the historic Earth-Carthax Accord would be expanded, Elena reflected on the profound irony of their victory. Humanity had faced extinction at the hands of the galaxy's most powerful empire, armed with technologies centuries beyond Earth's development. Yet the decisive factor hadn't been weaponry or military strategy, but the unique evolutionary path that had given humans individual consciousness. When we faced the Carthaxians, many argued for developing better weapons, President Okafor noted later during the ceremony. Instead, we shared our most precious evolutionary gift, our capacity for individual thought, creativity, and subjective experience. As the first joint human Carthaxian exploration vessels prepared for launch, crewed by members of both species working together as equals, Elena gazed through the viewport at the stars beyond. The universe had suddenly become a much larger, more interesting place. We didn't just save Earth, she whispered. We transformed the course of galactic civilization itself.